Well, I'm honored to be here today, and I've met so many people who are honorees in their own right in our community, who've done so much for so many of us that they should be speaking here with me or before me or certainly after me. I accepted the invitation to come here because I've been speaking about Dachau and I've been speaking about the Holocaust since 2003. Now, you have to recall that I enlisted in the Army when I was 19 in 1942. That I did not speak about my military career until 2003 was because I wanted to block it out in many ways from my thoughts and block out what I had seen. But in 2003, Rabbi Neil Brief, who's in this audience, asked me to speak on Kristallnacht, which was the night of the broken glass on November 9th, 1938 in Nazi Germany, when rioting and killing and murdering and destruction took place all over Germany against the Jews. It was so frightening and so overwhelming that the press all over the world picked it up because what occurred was beyond human understanding and belief. And the rabbi asked me to speak on Kristallnacht. I said to the rabbi, why me? I'm in politics. I speak about county government, state government, federal government, local government. I don't speak about Kristallnacht. And he said, I heard your 11th Engineer Combat Battalion was one of the liberating battalions on April 29, 1945 in Germany, liberating Dachau. So you can see that the history of our time is a troubling history. When we talk about the great 20th century, sometimes I think it was great, but sometimes I think it was the worst. We had years beyond acknowledgement. We had years which I wanted to forget. And the rabbi told me I had an obligation to remember. And maybe that's true for all of us. We must remember. If we don't see the past, we certainly blind our eyes to the future and sometimes blind our eyes to the present because the world is in such disruption and the human condition is so deteriorating throughout the world, throughout time, and the 20th century illustrated that poignantly between the years 1933 and 1945 for me. Because I remember I was 10 years old when Hitler became premier of Germany, and I remember hearing in my classroom from a teacher that Jewish anti-Semitism was abounding in Germany, and when asked by a student why, he said because the Jews were cause of all the trouble in the Weimar Republic. And I was overwhelmed. Then I was 13 years old at Proviso High School. And I told the teacher, I said nothing. Apparently I was the only Jewish student in the class. I told the teacher afterwards that I was going to tell on him about what he said because I didn't believe what he said was right and I didn't believe what he said was true. And he apologized to me, not realizing that Calvin Sutker is Jewish. And the next day in the German class, which I took, he apologized to the class for his remarks and was shameful of them. And just this last April 19th, in the village of Skokie in the state of Illinois, the German ambassador to the United States spoke at the opening of the Illinois Holocaust Memorial Foundation building, and he spoke about the shameful period in German life, about the dastardly occurrences in Nazi Germany, about the awful decade it was under the Nazis, and that he is now humiliated by it and embarrassed by it and ashamed of it, and he wants the world to know it. So it shows you that even those who were part or in the Nazi Germany Germany of 1935, 1945, that there's great regrets. And I think the rabbi is right. We must remember, because if we forget, it can occur again. And it is occurring again. Maybe not 6 million like were slaughtered in European countries by the Nazis, 6 million Jews. Maybe in some places only 6,000. In some places it may only be 600. In other places it may be 60,000 or 600,000. But whatever the number, it should not be. And we as human beings should be outraged about our condition and about what we are part of if we support it, don't recognize it, and don't oppose it. When I went into the Army in 1942, I spent some time in the Army Specialized Training Program, and which was abruptly closed because of need for personnel in combat. I went into the 11th Engineer Combat Battalion, assigned to that battalion, and was sent overseas to Europe and got into combat in the winter of 1944 and 45. And the first combat I was in the Vosges Mountains in southern France in the winter of 1944 and 45. And my foxhole mate, I was a corporal, very high-ranking office. My foxhole mate was Jesse Ivansky, a Roman Catholic fellow from New Jersey, who was about 29 years old, and I was about 20 years old then, 21. And when we were in combat in the Vosges Mountains, he said, "Cal, get rid of your dog tags." I said, "Jesse, what do you mean, get rid of my dog tags?" He said, "Cal, your dog tags say if you're shot or killed that your chaplain will be Jewish. It says you're Jewish." I said, "Yeah, Jesse, you know I'm Jewish. I know you're Catholic. I know your dog tags say you're a Catholic." He says, "Cal, but you don't understand. If you're captured, you're dead. They'll kill you, they'll slaughter you, they'll torture you, and put you to death. They won't capture you. Me, they'll capture." I said, "Jesse, why do you say that? What makes you say that? You were at the 7-hour movie. We saw a 7-hour movie in England before we came over to France, which gave us the details of what to experience in combat. And that 7-hour movie, it was a Frank Capra 7-hour documentary that they were showing troops that were going into combat." I said, "There was nothing there about slaughtering or Jews or killing Jewish prisoners." He said, "Yes, that's true. But I'm telling you, my family is from Poland. And we know about Auschwitz and we know about Birkenwald. And I'm sure you don't." I said, "Well, I don't believe you." When he described what was going on at Auschwitz and Birkenwald, I said, "Jesse, I don't believe you. In war, we always make the enemy a tyrant. We always make him evil. They're probably saying the same thing about us. Jesse, you can't be right. It's got to be wrong." I didn't take away my dog tags. I kept them. And when in combat in the Vosges Mountains in the Colmar Pocket, and someday you may want to read about it, because it was well south of where Bastogne is and was during that very critical period in World War II, 1944, late 44 into 1945. We cleared the Colmar Pocket. In January, we crossed the Rhine. We lost 11,000 men in the 7th Army killed at that time, January of 1945. The Germans lost 25,000 men, I've been told, during that same period in the same locations. So we were killing and we were being killed. And I kept my dog tags. And I referred to that movie because I think you ought to know about it historically. It was a 7-hour movie that they showed combat troops about Germany and Austria and France.